My name is Phalgun, short for Phalgun Polepalli. We actually design, develop, publish board games, and these are modern strategy board games. So I'll show you what we actually make in a couple of seconds. First of all, I'm really excited to be here, listen to all of such amazing speakers. Shiva's presentation just took me to a different world. Now I'm taking a few seconds to come back to what I'm supposed to talk here. So I'm here to talk about the potential of board games in the Indian market and also abroad for exports and everything. But most importantly, I feel this is a perfect topic for all of you here because it's a perfect amalgamation of everything, right? Typography, art, design, print, different material, different manufacturing processes. So yeah, let me jump into the next slides and take you to a different world. Yeah. So whoever I talk to, especially in the board game industry, everyone's saying this one single word, which is we are in the golden age of board games. I'm sure, from the last couple of talks, you were transported to the future where everything is digital, everything is AR, but let me show you a different world. So when we say board games, it's actually a more commonly known term. People refer to card games, tabletop games, and anything which is played at a table as board games nowadays, right? So in this presentation, I will be referring to everything as board games. All right, so I hope you guys are ready to, travel to a different world. So this is a small snippet from one of the conventions we just came back. It's been a month and we're still breathless. This is a board games convention that happens in Germany every year, and it's been happening for the last 5 decades, right? It's like the pilgrimage for board gamers, right? When we say board games, we're not talking about chess and Monopoly and snakes and ladders. No, these are 100 times more complex than these games. They're more strategy driven than luck, right? So just to give you an idea, just look at the number of people here, right? Again, I just want to show off that the games that these guys are playing out there are our games. The first game is based on the Indus Valley civilization. And the latest game called Karigar-e-Taj, where you're actually building the Taj Mahal. Both are strategy games with multiple types of components that go into making this game a reality. So, some of you might have heard of all of these popular conventions, right? Like Comic-Con that happens in San Diego. Comic-Con happens all over the world, but the one that happens in San Diego is the largest in the world. On a day in Comic-Con, there are 50,000 visitors, all right? Disney World, which is open throughout the year, attracts around 50,000 visitors a day, okay? Essenspiel. Spiel means play in German. This is the convention which is only for board games, that happens in Germany once a year. That's what I just showed you. Attracts 2.5 lakh visitors. And when I say visitors here, they're purely board gamers, all right? This is 2022. I'm not talking about 20 years back or 30 years back. These are some of the board games which actually some of them you might be recognizing. Netflix, in fact, has released a board game because the community or the cult around board games is massive, right? These are some of the board games. I'm sure you might recognize a couple of them like Catan and Carcassonne and stuff like that. Just to give you an idea, these games like Carcassonne, Catan, Agricola, all of these are 40 plus years old. In fact, their great-grandchildren are actually releasing new versions of the game. So when we started, we are a 5-year-old company. We are not as old as Shiva. Probably I'm as old as Shiva's entire experience in that industry. All right. So this is when we actually started our business, when it was people were saying, hey, the toy industry in the world is a $110 billion industry, and board games is just a 4 billion industry in that, right? It's like a small, tiny dot in the entire pie. And the crazy part is, just a small info here, in the $110 billion industry, which is the toy industry in the world, America alone is 45% of that market, all right? And as you know, 90% of that is manufactured in China, right? The crazy part is this, which blew our minds, and the reason why we are so deep into this business right now, so motivated, and nobody can pull us back, is this, right? We are a 1.35 billion people, population in India, and our world, the market share in this huge toy industry, where US is 45% with just 300 million people, India is 1.35 billion people, and our market share is just 0.5%, which is not even a whole number. So which blew us, we couldn't believe what is wrong, right? We have 400 million middle class, upper middle class people, 400 million children in the age group of 3 years to 14 years, and what is happening? Why is this happening, right? Then we went deeper and deeper and realized there's a huge supply issue, but there's a huge market. There's no sources, there's no suppliers. Okay, so that's when we learned that, this board games market is actually $4 billion. We're still happy, we'd rather be in a niche market and be leaders in it than be in a larger market and fight with competitors, right? The crazy part was, thanks to the pandemic, unfortunately, board games became one of the most sought after medium in every family, because their education was online, their work was online, their entertainment was online, their tuitions were online, they used to chat with people online, and they wanted this, desperate need for off-screen time. And we ourselves witnessed a 800% spike in sales. Luckily, thanks to our manufacturer sitting there, we had inventory at the right time. Today, it's a $13 billion industry, and this year is not even, ended, right? And December is like the crazy season. That's like a 3x multiple there, a 300% jump from the estimates all the industry experts put out there. This is what people are predicting in the next 5 years. It's going to be $30 billion. So the toy industry is not growing at a crazy exponential pace like this. The toy market is growing at a 13 to 15% CAGR, right, annually. This is growing at way more than that. Now, just to give a small insight on the board games market growth in India, right? In 2018, when we started, these were the metrics we had. There were 5 game publishers. So when we say publishers, these guys are not just people who design games and, hey, I'm going to make 100 copies of that game. No. These are publishers who've gone full out, investing loads of money, making 5,000, 10,000 copies of a game and pushing it out. It could be designed by someone else, and they are probably paying royalty to them and stuff like that. There were just 5 game publishers, okay? Some of the games from these publishers are manufactured by some of you in the audience. 10 board game cafes in the whole of India, okay? Not snakes and ladders, Uno, Jenga, no. These are modern strategy board games where you are in control of the outcome in the game. Not roll a dice and hope that, fingers crossed, do namaskara and stuff like that and hope it's a 6 and 6. No. These are modern strategy board games. There were 5 board game meetup organizers. This is just 2-3 years back, right? In 2020 and 2022, these numbers have jumped. 50 plus game publishers from just India. In fact, we had to make a WhatsApp group and a Discord group and a Telegram group to accommodate like 700 designers coming out of India who are actually specializing in game design in their final year of design, but end up joining an IT company or a startup to do UI and UX, which is dumb, right? We are really happy to actually create a platform where designers are, interning with us, designing some cutting edge games for people out there. The crazy part now is 10 board games in 2018. There are 10 board game cafes in just Bangalore alone now. There are 10 board game cafes in Chennai now, in Hyderabad, in tier 2 cities like Kochi, Coimbatore, It's crazy. So here's a quick perspective. You might be wondering, hey, come on, board games are primitive, prehistoric. This is what Indus Valley civilization people used to play. No. I'm actually referring to the board games versus esports that is commonly brought up when you talk to people, right? When I say esports, imagine IPL teams, but for video games. There are teams being, their career is basically to form a team, sit somewhere in a fancy computer lab, and all that they do is play games, and they actually form such teams. You can, I don't know, some of you who play Fortnite and all of these, you might be part of these communities and clans where you'd be like, you see the top 100 teams and you're like, oh man, how I wish I was part of those, right? All of those teams and, whatever you might put, esports is basically 1.5 billion, right? To give you a perspective, you might have heard of Kickstarter, right? It's a crowdfunding platform in US where many of the people across the world, their dreams come to life because of Kickstarter, where you're not funding the game yourself. You're not paying a penny out of your pocket. The backers are supporting you to bring that to life. On Kickstarter, board games alone have raised close to $1 billion. And what's the best part about Kickstarter and board games funding themselves? You don't have to take a loan. You don't have to raise funds. You don't have to give equity, nothing. The backers are funding your entire production run, right? Now you must be wondering, hey, this guy is going on and on about board games. Why board games, right? So this is what a lot of people in the industry always say, that in all of the medium which are out there, right, board games are the only medium which has a very long shelf life. You might have seen, right, during the pandemic, your family is really bored and like, hey, I don't want to see any more movies. I'm done with watching TV. Bring out a game. They'll pull out this 30-year-old dusty Scrabble or Monopoly and you started playing. That's the beauty about board games. They're long shelf life. And this is the only medium, when you look at indoor media, where a group of people actually come together, bond at a table, create memories. When was the last time you saw a family sitting at a table and not staring at a mobile phone, going through WhatsApp videos and Instagram videos and reels, right? This is the only medium which actually brings them together and create memories, right? They're age neutral, gender neutral. The medium is super immersive. You can tell stories, you transport them into a whole new world. They are the protagonists in it. They have to choose what they have to do. They have to decide what they have to do every turn, and the ending is not the same like a textbook or a storybook, right? So, for storytelling. So you might be telling, what are these stories? So let me just zip back to this one. So Catan is actually a quick run through some of the games so you get an idea of what these board games are all about, right? Let me start off with Pandemic. So we are all familiar with Pandemic, right? This particular game was designed around 11 to 12 years ago when the first SARS attack happened. And you won't believe it when you play this game called Pandemic, which we have played thousands of times. Unfortunately, we've never managed to win the game because it's impossible to win in this game. It's crazy how realistic the game is. The way it spreads, you don't cure it, it spreads again. There's an epidemic, you don't find a cure, you're screwed, right? So amazing stuff. The Carcassonne is based on the actual fort in the city called Carcassonne in France. Agricola is a optimization game where you're streamlining your operation. It's a farming game, end of the day. You're taking care of cows and goats, but it's still an optimization game. And I can go on. These are just a few of them. The crazy part is, every year, there are 12,000 new games which are launched in the world. Every year, 12,000 new games which people have never seen before. What have Indians made in this? Zero. Until we came in, of course. So there's been a massive paradigm shift when it came to board games in this industry, right? One, until now, board games which came from India were considered very traditional, too luck based, all based on mythology or something like that, right? History or something like that. But the crazy part was there were a lot of these European designers who couldn't wait for a good game to come out of India, so they started whipping up games on their own and gave it an Indian name. You won't believe this, there's a game called Ganesha which has nothing to do with Ganesha in the game, and it was designed by Romanian, okay? There's a game called Taj Mahal with the Taj Mahal photo and Shah Jahan on the box, and I like the game for the mechanics, but the artwork is crap. I'll tell you why it's crap. In this game, it's a game designed by a German designer. He's a legend. He's designed 800 games. His name is Rainer Knizia. I respect him for that. But in this game, you're building 50 Taj Mahals across India. At least a small Google search would have told him that there's only one, right? And according to the game, the Taj Mahal is the headquarters of the Mughals. So this is how, there's another game called Rajas of the Ganges where you're actually exchanging karma points for utensils and tools and stuff like that. They basically abuse this terminology which comes out of India, right? And when we launched these games 4 or 5 years back, starting with Indus, which is based on the Indus Valley civilization, where you're building the city and you're planning the city, and we've gone super detailed into we spoke to historians, we went to Dholavira and all that, and suddenly there were like tweets going viral around this, articles written about this game. We are like, like this, we have no clue what's happening around the world. And somebody tells us, hey, Indus has put India on the board games map. We're like, high time, right? And the global demand for Indian games suddenly in the last 2-3 years has shot up, right? In fact, to give you an idea, I just showed you the German expo that we were at, and we were lucky enough to be sponsored to exhibit there. And the moment we landed there, my phone connected to the network, and I'm getting all these congrats messages. I was like, what's happening? And apparently, some of the games were chosen as the most anticipated games at that event among 12,000 games, which is crazy. At the same time, I'm pissed because it's 2022, and why the hell did we take this long to showcase our creativity, right? And in fact, it became so popular that people started stealing our games at the expo. So Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the next gen, are not going to look at snakes and ladders and Monopoly because there are like 100,000 Monopoly variations in the world. They want something which is, they are nerds. They love immersive stuff. They love Harry Potter. They love Game of Thrones. They love Stranger Things. And all of these shows are actually showcasing board games. Big Bang Theory and all of these things, they're so addicted to this. And they're showing board games. And the whole show is based on board games. I'm sure some of you have heard of Stranger Things, right? There's a whole Dungeons and Dragons theme around it, where kids are playing the game and that comes to real life, which is crazy. They hate luck-based games, right? They move to strategy games. And the most important thing here is the feeling of missing out. A lot of FOMO is happening. They're like, oh man, that guy in that house has this game. Daddy, I want the same thing. Okay, another thing. So Gen Z and Gen Alpha, when I say Gen Z and Gen Alpha, these guys are like, in the age group of 10 to probably less than 30 years, right? These guys are people, they're old enough to play board games and young enough to play board games. So when the biggest misconception in India is board games are for children, which is the worst thing that could happen. But these guys are changing it because they're traveling abroad. They're like, hey, there is game nights happening at my friend's place. They're not drinking beer and playing poker. They're actually playing a strategy board game. That's what a game night means. And there's a huge backlash that is happening on digital content and on-screen time. In fact, I was telling somebody that I'm sure some of you might have seen that suddenly people are storming into Sapna bookstores and all of these bookstores on Church Street where you get second-hand books because they want that physical copy, right? And the whole Make in India push. So that's the huge paradigm shift that's happening right now. So the different business models when it comes to business of board games. One is you don't even have to design a game. You can actually license it from a great designer abroad and relaunch it in India. Why will it work in your favor is because the game The mechanics, the math, everything is figured out, tried and tested. So you don't even have to have the, knowledge of will that game, is the game okay, is the game design okay. You don't have to worry. But the market is there. There are no suppliers. So if you can license a game and publish it make it in India, fantastic. Publishing is another business, but this also involves a lot of innovative thought process, right? Like for example, we are publishers, we design and develop, and also we take ideas from other designers. We are literally inventing new concepts, we are inventing new gameplays, we are inventing new ways to tell these stories, drive it to the end user. So it's a challenge by itself because as Shiva mentioned, branding is a beast, right? But if you can crack it, there's nothing like it. And I think we have figured out and streamlined the process of cracking this, and we are sharing it with the community, which is 700 members strong. And distribution is another thing, right? When we say distribution, it's not just about, hey, finding a wholesaler or a retailer shop and putting it there. No. How do we send it there? While sending it, will it get damaged? Can I make a game which is a perfect form factor which fits into my pocket, right? So from a distribution perspective also, there's a lot of design thought process that goes into. So these are some of the models which I thought I would like to share with you. Licensing, where you don't even have to have the knowledge of designing games. I think it's a great thing because we have the infrastructure to manufacture in India, especially, looking at all the soap boxes and, the stuff that we just got today. It's crazy. We can easily beat China any day. In fact, we are right now. This is where a lot of businesses are, skipping. They skip the whole market research and brand building and jump directly into, hey, oh man, I have this $1 billion game idea. I want to do this. No, start with market research and brand building. So this is what we are driving really hard into everyone's head. Whoever reaches out and says, hey, Phalgun, how are you designing these games, man? Help me out, right? So this is what we tell, work backwards. Don't design first and then shove it down someone's throat. So the board games ecosystem is really cool. The reason why I put this slide here is to give you confidence that when a board game publisher reaches out to you, you have enough confidence to say yes. So board games ecosystem is such that now currently the modern board games, most of them go through a crowdfunding path. So that means finance wise, it's sorted, right? Online commerce is taking off in India, so it's really easy to push a brand, push a product into in front of the eyes of the customer. It's working wonders for us. Content creators is something which is crazy in this particular field. There are 1 million YouTube channel YouTubers out there who make content based on board games, right? They're reviewers, they're so excited about this new game coming, or they pick up something, they make these lists like top 10 party games, top 10 family games, top 10 games based on making whiskey, something like that. So there's so many board game conventions that are coming up. In fact, just in US, there are close to 25 to 30 board game conventions that happen a year. In India, there was one, and that was 4 years back. So, that's something which we are working on to make this happen more frequently. Manufacturing is our superpower, all right? So again, when we say manufacturing of board games, in fact, what's happening is, to give you an example, there is, we just showed you Indus and Karigare Taj, right? My manufacturer, he actually whipped up the game, 2,000 copies of it before the convention in a week. The same thing, if a German guy, a German designer wants his game to be manufactured and wants 2,000 copies of the game. So when I say board game, there's, there are a lot of components, right? There is a board which has a gray board and a sheet is stuck on it, and it has to be folded. It should not have wrinkles. It should not have bubbles. And there are different components like cards, tokens, cards in different sizes. When we say tokens, or these are like resources like round tokens, square tokens, hexagonal tokens. These are thick components and different such components. And the precision that's required here is crazy. And we have it, right? From coming out of India, why is it such a lucrative business right now? Is because As I said, 12,000 games that are released every year. There are like 1,000,000 games out there. There's a Wikipedia called Board Game Geek where you can actually go search for games, right? Now, majority of them have gone through the entire width, breadth, everything of European history and American history and all of that, right? Nobody has done anything based on India, and we have infinite stories to tell. And that's what we are starting off with. And people are loving it. People are finding our products exotic because, as usual, anything that comes out of India is exotic for these guys, right? And board games cafes, local meetups, to give you a crazy idea here. So the number of board game cafes and local meetups today is 175 plus all over India. So it's booming. Now, when it comes to manufacturing of board games, the reason why I mentioned that it requires special attention is because these are products which have a long shelf life. These are products which are going to be handled again and again. The user experience and everything needs to be A+, right? The cuts need to be perfect. The cards, they have a border. The border cuts need to be clean. It should not be powdery. It should not be uneven and stuff like that. Cards manufacturing is a huge gap in India right now. If somebody can pick up cards manufacturing in India, they're going to mint money. Paper and cardboard that we have right now, unfortunately in India, unless it's a large MOQ, you don't have access to materials which China has, right? I think that is a huge gap which the paper mills in India can take up. Sticking is one of the biggest problems in board games because every cardboard is stuck with some sheet, right? And if the glue is not, heated right, or there's dust particles in it, if the environment around the whole equipment is not clean enough, right? There are so many games which we have got from Indian manufacturers where there's hair stuck in it. There are footprints on it. There are tea stains on it, stuff like that. So we got to be really careful. There are ants stuck inside the paper and the cardboard. That it's not acceptable. We are shipping this out to an international crowd. It needs to be really gorgeous. So the quality control is something which we've noticed that it's taken very lightly. This is one place where people need to be super thorough. When we say quality control, it's basically like a component when they're sorting these components to put into a box, right, which goes into. So that's the crazy part about board games. When we say there are 100 cards, there have to be 100 cards, not any random 100 cards. These need to be the 100 cards I gave you in the PDF. That has to be in that, right? Like that, there are 100 other components. To give you an idea, any of our game, if you pick it up, there are like 300 plus components in them, right? So having the knowledge of these components is also very important. So when now, especially when we just came back from, when we were there at Germany at the booth, there were so many designers, publishers who came to us and said, dude, the components are amazing. How did you do this? And, can we come to you for production and stuff like that? I was like, sure. My guy will whip it up. Oh, okay. So this is an interesting idea. So the reason why we have a superpower with manufacturing is this, right? Like in the entire world, wait, I think I have a PPT for that as well. Yeah. So board games typically are, currently 90% of the board games are made in China. 8-9% is made in Europe, and India is a gold mine. India is a gold mine for multiple reasons, not just for manufacturing. We are also a country who consumes board games, which is not, the case in China. Unfortunately, Chinese only manufacture and ship it off. They don't play. They don't consume these products. But India will. India is a rich country, right? Now, the huge benefit that we have here is a European designer, when he designs something, he sends print-ready files to a Chinese manufacturer. First of all, he has to shortlist from 5,000 manufacturers, and finally reaches out to a bunch of them, tells them, hey, send me a sample of this. Or, as all of you know, that sample stage is the worst part in printing, where you have to make a short production run. They expect the final production quality, but it has to be done on a digital print, right? And there are a lot of to and fro movement, and then finally production is kicked off. And The time taken to produce and ship it through a container and reaching Europe takes close to 9 months from the point he said, I am going to print my game, to getting the game in his hand. And we are sitting here in Bangalore and whipping out games every 7-8 days. You know, my printing guy is sitting right there. He's like, sir, banbirtini igle. Be ready. Make space. I'm getting 2,000 copies. I'm like, shit. You know, that is the speed at which we are manufacturing right now. The only, con that we have here is the shipping. Shipping in India, exporting is something which probably some of you have figured it out. I would love to get inputs from all of you who has been exporting products to US, to Europe. It's not as streamlined as how China ships stuff out. Right? That's something which I'd love to get your inputs. So these are some of the board game manufacturers: Panda GM, Ludofact. Ludofact is a company in Germany. GameCrafter is in US, and they're trying to do Hero Time is in China. Packaging is in Bangalore. They make Monopoly and many other games in Bangalore. Manu Graphics are the guys who manufacture our games and 50 other game designers' games. Pragati is here. I know they were there in the morning. They're making such epic games, Ramya, Reprographics, and these are just some of them, right? There are plenty more, but there's a lot of hand holding that had to be done, and I think we are ready to take on the world. Thank you, everybody.